I've been driving around this redesigned Toyota Sequoia for 2 weeks now, and I've got a few things that I like and don't like on this one and some of the other trim levels. Let's get into it. Real quick, full disclosure before we get started, this is not a full review. If you want to see all the details, I have a full review of this Sequoia capstone in the description below. This is just going to be some nitpicks, so bear with me. Let's go. All right, starting with my dislikes in no particular order is the fact that the exterior dimensions are longer by a few inches, but there's less combined legroom and cargo space. Now the legroom is still good in the second row and overall, but compared to the previous gen, the first, second, and third row legroom is less than what it was before. If you want to see how I fit in here, be sure to check out my full detailed review. I fit in here pretty good, but it's still less considering its dimensions. And I think the biggest negative to me, the biggest head scratcher with this Sequoia is the third row cargo space. This is just putrid back here. This should not be the cargo space in a vehicle this big. Thankfully, Toyota at least gives you the option to move that seat forward like that, both the third rows, but then you basically have no legroom for that third row seat. If we fold these down, which we can with power folding function, you have the option of moving this to match this part of the floor, or you can lift it up to where, get it in there, to where it can match that part of the floor. So this is your new cargo space. That significantly decreases it as if it would be folded flat down into the floor. The reason being is because we still have a solid live axle under here for the rear axle, plus the battery, the hybrid battery is under this third row seat. So cargo space is less than Tahoe, less than Expedition, and less than the previous gen Sequoia 2. Now starting with some things that I like in no particular order here, we're gonna kind of go back and forth. It's the fact that this is so much more efficient than the previous generation. It is now a hybrid powertrain standard, and you can get 6 to 7 miles per gallon more than you did in the previous gen. It's still not great. Don't expect like 30, maybe 25 miles per gallon, but it's way better than it used to be. And that was a huge complaint before. Okay, another dislike is gonna be about the seating configuration. So this is common in some vehicle brands, but if you want captain's chairs, but you want a lower trim, you can't have it. If you want a bench seat, but you want a higher trim, you can't have it. So you're stuck depending on the trim, whether you get captain's chairs or a bench seat. And if you get the captain's chairs, these don't even slide forward and backwards. That can be nice sometimes to afford the third row more room, but only the bench seat slides forward and backwards. So that would be something that, you know, maybe it's a big deal to you guys on which configuration you get. What do you prefer, captain's chairs or bench seat? The next thing that I like is that the Sequoia now has more power, more torque, more towing capability by about 2,000 pounds in some instances, and it's still a truck frame with a body-on-frame, fully boxed frame, and a solid rear axle, which makes the Sequoia durable, big, rugged, and capable. And I like that about the Sequoia because Toyota's bringing out the Grand Highlander, which will be the bigger crossover. So this is not a crossover, it's an SUV. And if you want a more crossover type of ride, more crossover type of vehicle with more three-row space, get a minivan first of all. But if you don't want a minivan, you can get the Grand Highlander. That's not what this video is about. Let's move on. All right, the next dislike is gonna be under the hood. So it's not that I don't like this powertrain, it's that I don't like that there's not another option. The only option is a hybrid, and I know that's gonna scare some of you away. It's a very powerful hybrid, but it's a twin turbo hybrid, and a lot of you might want a naturally aspirated engine. You might want the old V8 back, even though it's extremely inefficient. It's just the fact that Toyota doesn't give us an option anymore. And if we didn't have the hybrid here, you could take that battery pack out of the back and have more cargo space. So it's just some give and some take. Now, another thing that I like is the fact that the interior is now full of niceties. So not only are there soft touch materials and panels standard on every trim, on most trims you get fancy things like this large 14-inch screen. This is wireless Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. You can get an upgraded audio system. You've got this large digital display here standard on everything. A heated steering wheel is available, a power adjustable steering wheel as well. Heated and ventilated seats, of course, wireless charging. Even the second row gets heated and ventilated seats on some trims. You've got a huge panoramic roof available as well. The second row and third row can give you sunshades. Toyota now gives us this digital rearview mirror here too. Auto folding or auto out running boards when you open the door, and more. It's just a nice interior, at least in my opinion, and it's just, if you go from one generation to the next, there's a big difference. Now, another dislike, I know this is something really small, but Toyota used to have this, or they still do in some vehicles, have the really cool sliding rear glass. They don't have that anymore. You can push this button to lift this up, so I'm glad they still give you that feature, but you don't have the really awesome sliding glass. Totally understand why they did it, but something I thought I'd mention. All right, y'all, my next like is the overall ride and handling. So I've seen people complain about the ride comfort on the Sequoia, but a lot of them are probably driving this top end trim with the biggest wheels, and they might forget that we have a rear axle in the back. That is kind of a negative to me too, but it's still, despite that, is pretty comfortable to drive. The ride comfort is good for a big SUV and for one with a live axle. So we need to keep that in mind. And this trim level has the biggest 22-inch wheels, and it's still comfortable going over bumps. You do feel some jitter sometimes, but I can only imagine it gets more and more comfortable down the trim lineup with smaller wheels. The handling's also not bad either. I like the way this drives and feels. So you feel like you're in a big, tall SUV in here, but it's not laborious to park. The steering is on point, and it handles well for a big SUV. The driving experience is just better overall. I just put us in sport mode just for fun to give you a little taste of the power and torque in here. Pedal down. And it gets up and goes. All right, another like that I have is the fact that this is a quiet vehicle. So not all Toyotas that I've driven have been known to be quiet. Some of them, but this one is quiet indeed. We have laminated glass on this trim on the side, laminated windshield. We've got good road noise and good wind noise, and it has some really good test scores that I've got for decibel ratings on all road surfaces. So it's a very pleasant, comfortable driving experience with the noise. And I talk about that because this is primarily a family vehicle, and when you have people in here, or maybe kids want to nap, or you want to talk to people in here, having a quiet ride can be very helpful and not add to the stress like a loud, obnoxious vehicle.